A lot of times people were even buried on the property.
Yeah, we don't know of any people being buried here. We know where the former owners are buried. There are two graveyards nearby, an older one and a somewhat newer one. A number of people died here, which that was common practice as well.
Don, also, a house that old, there was a lot of superstitions. People would put baby shoe or some other items, coins, and some other things in the walls. Have you ever found anything in the walls when you're doing your remodeling?
No, not in the walls. Now, we did find a very unique item in the basement when we were clearing things out. The basement was actually the original kitchen to the house. It has been unchanged since the house was first built. But we found appears to be an early 1800s military pistol barrel, just the barrel. It's a flintlock barrel, and it's about the right size and caliber to be one of the horse pistols of that era.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, really. And because the reason I ask that, because a lot of those things, sometimes they have spirit attachments. And even we've talked about before, Gary, not just the house. You could have a new house, and the land could be tainted with all kind of stuff,
Oh, yeah, like Liz's property, like with her seeing, a ghost or whatever it was, and then having her refrigerator open and close at night, or footsteps, or the bedroom door opening and closing. I mean, and her house is not that old, but again, is in Missouri. There was a lot of battles during the Civil War. So, who knows what's, in that field of her farm.
It's so true, and like the property that the house is on has a lot of evidence of early Native American presence. Recently, in the woods behind the house, we found what we believe to be the remains of some of the ancient Hopewell era agricultural mounds.
Oh, wow!
Overlooking a creek.
That's another thing with Gettysburg. There's a history of Indians battling each other there, and with white settlers. I don't think on the land that the battles were fought in the Civil War also. I don't think a lot of people realize that. Now, when you was there, did you experience anything like that, or do any research on that end of it?
Well, it's my experiences at Gettysburg are kind of unique. I had been there a number of times and never had any paranormal encounters, never even really thought in that direction. It was only after we had some of the things happening in the house that my wife and I had our first experiences there that we could not explain.
Interesting.
Well, has any more of the tools disappeared for any of the carpenters and the workers?
Really. Well, this one, it almost sounds too crazy to share on the radio, but I was preparing to leave for a Gettysburg trip. I was going to be investigating the Fairfield Inn, to be exact, and I had an EMF meter, an SB7 spirit box, and a small digital recorder in a bag, in a box, where I always kept them. I went to grab them in the morning when I'm leaving, and those items were gone.
You mean, did they reappear?
They just disappeared. Later, weeks later, I found the meter behind some CDs in the living room, 2 rooms away from where I had kept it. Later found the digital recorder in our paint supplies, where that it never would have been placed. I have yet to find that SB7 spirit box. I ended up buying another one.
Well, you know what? Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, why they was moving his tools, because the spirits, they don't like remodeling. It messes with them, and they were trying to stop your progress. But as far as the investigating equipment, that's a new one.
Well, I guess they don't want him to know, but that tells me it's not the type of residual, spirits. This sounds like he has actually ongoing haunting.
We have both. We have residual, and we have some very intelligent spirits. They move things like I have talked about. At one time, I was having a lot of trouble with a radio or CD player just plain turning off, or a radio changing stations, coming on by itself, changed to a different station. I like to listen to classic rock, or sometimes, like in the summer, listen to Detroit Tiger baseball. Well, I would come out to the house, and the radio that I had turned off before I left would be on, but would be on a station playing a Cleveland Indians baseball broadcast.
Oh, wow. they were really playing with you there.
A sense of humor. The weirdest one, I was, before we had power onto the house, it was very old electric wires. The house had water damage, so we had the power off when we purchased it. But I was using a generator out on the front porch. I was working in the living room with a table saw, actually cutting floorboards for upstairs, playing, and because of the saw, it was playing a classic rock station quite loud. 3 different times when a particularly loud song, kind of rowdy song, came on, the radio turned off. Now, this is the first time I had ever done this, but finally, after the 3rd time it turned off, I spoke out loud and I said, "Look, I like this music. Leave my music alone. Don't turn off the radio." And I turned it back on. I'm working. A few songs later, the exact song was Elton John, "Saturday Night's All Right for Fighting." That song came on. The radio did not turn off. The generator out on the porch turned off. Was not out of gas. It had been switched off. It fired right back up when I went out to restart it. I just had to laugh.
That would right there be enough to, scare you-know-what out of me.
Yeah. Hey, your basement, is it made out of limestone, or what's the basement made out of?
Well, the basement is brick, although the newer part of the house has a stone foundation, but the house is built actually into a sand ridge, one of the ancient Lake Erie beaches from the post-glacial period. So quartz is in abundance
yeah, that
here.
Sounds like a good setup for a lot of residual hauntings.
Now, what you're saying, James, is that like the record where it just keeps playing the same thing over and over again?
Yes, and some, it's not proven. You can't prove it, but there's a lot of data to back that basements with limestone or granite or any kind of thing that will conduit that like a continuing loop of a residual. And it sounds like you may have a lot of that going on with Intelligent also.
Well, how long can something like that keep going on, like a loop, replaying itself?
I'll tell you, it's something we just don't know. Sometimes we don't know what activates it or what happens, but who knows? We just don't know.
Now is that something you can get rid of, or is that you're stuck with it?
You know what? That's a good question. I've never come across anybody that could get rid of residual. I'm sure there may be a way, but it's such an untapped science. It just is.
Don, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, I've looked into some of the science and theories, or at least potential science and theories behind it. And like one of the theories is to why Gettysburg is so active is because of the quartz rocks there. But another thing that I found quite intriguing is some research into the fact that the iron oxide, like in nails in old buildings, rusted nails, they think that the static electricity in the atmosphere can actually cause a sound recording onto the nail that, when conditions are right, can be replayed just like an old cassette tape. And I guess some of that's actually been replicated in the lab, which I think could explain a lot. So sometimes,
when you hear footsteps going up and down, it instead of actually being active spirits, it could be, basically a past recording of it. Then,
yeah, exactly.
Scary.
Yeah, the hard part is trying to distinguish between the two. That's where you need a little bit of equipment. Maybe you can talk to them intelligently or whatnot. But I'd say the main thing is just don't show no fear.
Now, has Don, in your house, I mean, because since it's happening so often, is this what really got you into writing the books?
The occurrences at the house really got me looking into the field. The single experience that really got me to writing the book, I'd had some things happen at Gettysburg, paranormal-wise, but my grandson and I were in Gettysburg. He was 14 at the time, and we were there for the history. That's something we would do over spring break when he was young enough, before his baseball playing at the higher levels took spring break away. But I thought to keep him entertained, I was registered as a journalist, so I could do some kind of behind-the-scenes thing, like at the visitor center and whatnot. But we were offered a free ghost investigation. And, I said, hey, Connor, think that's cool? He said, yeah, that sounds all right. Let's do that. Now, I thought this was going to be totally a tourist trap kind of thing. They took us out to Sachs Bridge. Actually, it was a young lady was our investigator guide, and I wasn't thrilled with Sachs Bridge at the time. I have since come to a very different view of Sachs Bridge, but I wanted to go to like one of the hospital buildings or something. But we go to Sachs Bridge. She had an array of different equipment that we could use. We tried a laser grid, and wish I would have used a digital recorder, but we used spirit boxes as well, and a flashlight to try to get it to turn off and on. But this was to be a 2-hour investigation. There were quite a few people at the bridge when we got there, and we were getting nothing. There were other people around. I had concluded it was pretty much a waste of time until about 5 minutes before our investigation was to end, we finally had the bridge to ourselves. So we sat down at the end, and we actually started getting responses on the spirit box, which I thought were quite intriguing, and they were very clear. Sometimes a spirit box is not the best tool, but this particular time things were coming through quite clearly. The investigator says, is anyone with us? Yes. How many of you are there? And we got a clear 7, 8, 9, and we got some other answers, and then things were fading off, but I was intrigued. So she went back. It was a cold spring evening. She went back to start the car and warm it up. So my grandson and I are sitting there, and I thought, okay, if this really is something, and they'd given us the year 1863 when she asked what year it was. So I'm thinking maybe this is some sort of hoax or whatever, but I thought, hey, if this is 1863, say these are soldiers, what would get them going? So I said, do you like jokes? Got a very polite, clear, yes, sir. and so I asked, well, do you like music? Well, of course, almost like he was insulted that I would ask. And my grandson, out of the blue, says, can you play for us? And we started getting guitar music, very clear, kind of fading in and out. It definitely was not a radio station bleeping through, the spirit box. This was very clear measures of music, acoustic guitar. It sounded like a higher-pitched mandolin kicked in. Well, the investigator came back while this music is playing, and the look on her face was priceless.
I bet.
Her mouth was open. She's staring at this thing. This music went on for, I think, like 10 minutes. When it finally faded out, I said, wow, you're good. And the voice says, thank you. I said, can you play some more? He says, yes, sir. And we got several minutes more, and this time a harmonica kicked in with the other two instruments. I'm thinking that, okay, they saw this journalist coming, and they wanted to get a good write-up for their ghost investigations. But this fades out, and so even though the investigation should have been over a while ago, we're asking questions. We got a person to come through who gave us his name, it was hard to make out, but he kept repeating it. We could make out pretty close